having a rebellion on your first King's speech is very significant, even with a big majority. It is potentially quite damaging for Starmer to, at this very early stage, just over a fortnight into his premiership, be facing a rebellion from his very own MPs.
Suspending 7 Rebel MPs over how they voted on the child benefit cap. Why do you think he's done that?
I think that he has done this because it is an early and quite vital opportunity for him to make it clear to would-be rebels and potential dissidents in the Labour ranks that rebelling on a key issue like this will not be tolerated. Now, this is an issue that is a concern for Number 10 because scrapping the two-child limit is something that is widely popular within the Labour Party. Indeed, many frontbenchers and loyal Starmer supporters have spoken out against that policy in the past, and Starmer has been pleading very carefully for patience with these Labour MPs, indicating that they'll be looking at it further down the line. And having a rebellion on your first King's speech is very significant, even with a big majority. It is potentially quite damaging for Starmer to, at this very early stage, just over a fortnight into his premiership, be facing a rebellion from his very own MPs.
Yeah, I think one of the questions is, if, depending on how big the rebellion had been, would he have suspended all of them? Because those suspended, they're suspended for 6 months. They're now sitting as an independent. And then what? There's going to be a review of some kind.
Yes, and then they will be reviewed. And I think you could expect they'll be having conversations with whips during that period to see whether or not they will be reinstated. I think you're right to point out that the fact that it was a small number, just 7, means that it was more plausible, really, for Starmer to remove the whip. Some are drawing comparisons with Tony Blair's first big rebellion. Now, that was 47 Labour MPs who opposed plans to cut benefits for single families. But I personally think this comparison is not massively fair. That was more than 6 months into Blair's premiership, and it was not over a King's speech. It was actually over an active government bill. And, Blair wouldn't have been able to discipline all of those in the way that Starmer has. This was on a very first King's speech, and it was on an amendment to a policy that wasn't being introduced by the Labour government, as much as the SNP who tabled this amendment would like it to be seen as a Labour policy. This is not something that the party introduced. And I think given that Starmer has privately been pleading and publicly for patience from these MPs, you can see why those around him were keen to act quite quickly to discipline those MPs who defied him last night.
So 6 months suspension for those involved. One thing, we had sort of hints about this yesterday, but how are the Labour Party planning to deal with those of us off work, long-term sick? We've talked about it, endlessly before, 2.8 million people. Do they have a plan?
This is such a fascinating issue because we heard from Liz Kendall yesterday, the Work and Pensions Secretary, who was, of course, on Times Radio. And when I listened to that interview with you guys, I found it quite difficult to work out what her point actually was, because she said she didn't feel that people were lying about being, off sick, etc. And actually, the report that had been on the front of the Times that morning that said that people were becoming kind of more tolerant of fraud was kind of one of the contributors to a rising benefits bill. She said that was written by the previous government. She wasn't endorsing that. And then yesterday she was sat with Alan Milburn, who's of course a former Blair-era health secretary and has helped with a review on this question. And Milburn, I think, was quite punchy on this. He was very keen to say that he felt that most people who were out of work and on sickness benefits wanted to work, and they needed to make sure that they found a way to get them back to work. And I mean, some really punchy words in the Times Stream this morning. Who's arguing that those long-term sick must be required to look for jobs to deal with unsustainable welfare costs and to reduce the country's what he calls toxic reliance on immigration. Now, of course, he's not a Labour frontbencher now, but he is a key advisor to those. And I think it will be very interesting to see whether the language of those two matches up over the coming months, and whether or not Labour do get a balance between the carrots and the sticks that we heard many previous Conservative figures argue for. Key thing on this, the Conservatives did not neglect this area. Countless budgets turned on this very, very issue. It is a spiralling budget, as you say, over the next few years. It will make a big impact on what Rachel Reeves is able to do in various fiscal statements. Will they grip it? I think it would be very interesting to see.
Final thing we should ask you about, nominations open today. If you fancy, as a Conservative MP, running for the leadership, James Cleverly is first out to say, yeah, he's going to have a go. Who are the other contenders? Who are we imagining will be on the list?
Yes, so there are more than a half a dozen contenders. So we're expecting, of course, well, not we're expecting, we have now seen James Cleverly, of course, the Shadow Home Secretary, launch his bid with a video that reminded me of John Major's famous movie where he visited one of his childhood homes and was surprised actually in the Major case that it was still in existence. But it's a great video, and I think Cleverly's one reminded me slightly of it. And then you also have Robert Jenrick, who is, of course, the former immigration minister. You have Kemi Badenoch, who is, of course, another on that shadow front bench. And then you have maybe Victoria Atkins, who was, of course, health secretary until recently. And I think also Tom Tugendhat from the more moderate wing of the party, from those so-called One Nation gangs. And then we could see Suella Braverman, of course, the former Home Secretary, throw her hat into the ring as well. So we won't be short of would-be candidates, but we're expecting them to come in over the next few days.
There's a brilliant piece in the paper this morning, putting the odds on all of those contenders as well, so well worth a read. Lara, thank you, editor of the Times Red Box. Every morning about 8:30, Lara writes a fantastic email with all the Westminster whispers. There'll be many of them today, and insider knowledge. Head to the Times website to find out more.